Effects on Student Outcomes, a conversation on educational equity. Hello, I would like to begin a conversation about how different education systems impact students. It should be obvious that education is more than just a pathway to employment. It is the foundation of personal growth, social development, and long-term well-being. But doesn't it follow that when the system itself is unequal, the opportunities it provides will also be uneven? The question is, are we designing education to uplift all students, or are we creating divides that reinforce existing inequalities? I have observed that publicly funded education systems tend to create more balanced and equitable opportunities. When schools are well-funded, teachers are properly supported, and resources are distributed fairly, student performance improves across the board. Can you imagine how different the world would be if every child had access to a high-quality education, regardless of their socioeconomic background? Wouldn't it be more effective if education was structured to nurture each student's unique strengths, rather than simply measure them against rigid one-size-fits-all benchmarks? Doesn't it follow that privatized education models often struggle with accessibility and quality control? While private schools may offer elite learning environments, they also introduce disparities in who gets access to the best teachers, materials, and support systems. In systems where privatization dominates, students from lower-income families are often left with underfunded public schools that lack the resources to provide the same level of education. It should be obvious that when education is treated as a market-driven system, economic privilege becomes the determining factor in a child's future. It is time now to reconsider whether privatization actually leads to better education or simply creates an illusion of choice. Can you imagine the frustration of parents who cannot afford private education but know their children deserve better than an overcrowded, underfunded public school? What if, instead of expanding privatization, governments prioritized making every school a place where students could thrive? Wouldn't it be more powerful to invest in public education so that excellence isn't exclusive to those who can pay for it? I've observed that countries with strong public education systems, such as Finland and Canada, consistently produce students who are not only high-achieving, but also more adaptable and socially aware. Doesn't it follow that when education is equally available to all, society as a whole benefits? Nations that invest in equitable education tend to experience stronger economies, lower crime rates, and greater civic engagement. Wouldn't it be transformative if education were seen not as an expense, but as the most critical investment in a nation's future? It should be obvious that student outcomes are shaped by more than just classroom instruction. The integration of real-world learning, emotional well-being, and a connection to the larger social fabric all contribute to long-term success. Can you imagine how different education would be if we focused less on test scores and more on fostering curiosity, problem-solving, and lifelong learning? What if schools were designed not just to prepare students for the workforce, but to help them develop into creative, thoughtful, and engaged members of society? The future of education depends on the priorities we set today. It is time to recognize that well-funded public education leads to better outcomes for all, not just the wealthy or privileged, but for every student. Doesn't it follow that if we truly believe in fairness, opportunity, and social progress, we must create education systems that leave no one behind? The question isn't whether reform is needed. The question is, are we ready to commit to an education system that serves everyone, not just those who can afford it?